Thomas the janitor was invisible, nobody saw him mopping floors. Then a gunman aimed at the Queen. Thomas didn't hesitate. He ran. 3 bullets ripped through his body. He died for 4 minutes on that blood-soaked floor. What the Queen did next morning made the invisible man immortal. Before watching full story, comment below from where you watching. Also like and subscribe for more stories. Thomas Bennett was invisible. Every morning at 5 a.m., he cleaned the floors of the Grand Park Convention Center in London. He mopped, he scrubbed, he emptied trash bins. People walked past him without seeing him. To them he was just the janitor. Just the help. Just nobody. Thomas was 41 years old with calloused hands and a tired face. He had a daughter named Lily who was 8 years old. Her mother had abandoned them when Lily was only 2, leaving a note that said she wasn't ready to be a parent. Since then, Thomas had raised Lily alone. He worked as a janitor during the day and as a security guard at night. He barely slept. He barely ate. But Lily never missed a meal. She never missed school. She never felt unloved. "Daddy, why do people look through you?" Lily had asked him once. Thomas had smiled sadly. "Because I'm not important, sweetheart. You're important to me." That was all that mattered to Thomas. His daughter's love. Everything else, the exhaustion, the poverty, the loneliness, he could handle as long as Lily was happy. But Thomas had a secret that nobody knew. 20 years ago, he had been Sergeant Thomas Bennett of the British Army. He had served in Iraq and Afghanistan. He had saved lives. He had been decorated with medals for valor. Then he had been injured in an explosion that killed 3 of his friends. The army discharged him with PTSD and a small pension that wasn't enough to live on. He came home broken, unable to hold down regular jobs because of his nightmares and anxiety. So he became a janitor. A night security guard. Jobs where he could be alone with his thoughts. Jobs where nobody asked questions. The medals were in a box under his bed. He never looked at them. They reminded him of the men who didn't come home. On a Tuesday morning in June, Thomas arrived at work to find the convention center in chaos. Security guards were everywhere. Barricades were being set up. Fancy cars lined the streets. "What's going on?" Thomas asked his supervisor. "The Queen is visiting today. She's giving a speech about charity work. This place needs to be spotless, Bennett. Don't mess this up." The Queen of England was coming here. To this building that Thomas cleaned every day. Thomas felt a strange flutter in his chest. He had served his country for years, but he had never seen the Queen in person. She was a symbol of everything Britain stood for. Duty, service, honor. Thomas worked harder than ever that morning. He polished floors until they gleamed. He cleaned windows until they sparkled. He wanted everything to be perfect for Her Majesty. By noon, the convention center was transformed. Red carpets lined the entrance. Flowers decorated every corner. Hundreds of people in expensive suits and dresses filled the main hall. And Thomas was told to stay in the basement. "We can't have the help wandering around during the event," his supervisor said. "Stay down here until it's over." Thomas nodded. Of course. He was just the janitor. Just nobody. But fate had other plans. At 2 p.m., Thomas heard screaming from upstairs. His military training kicked in immediately. That wasn't excitement. That was terror. He ran up the stairs, his heart pounding. As he burst through the door into the main hall, he saw chaos. A man stood on the stage with a gun. He was screaming about the government, about injustice, about how the Queen represented everything wrong with Britain. He was waving the gun wildly. The Queen stood frozen on the stage, her security team trying to position themselves around her. But the gunman was too close. He had somehow gotten past all the security checkpoints. "You've ignored us for too long," the gunman screamed. His name was Richard Walsh, though Thomas didn't know that yet. "While you live in palaces, we starve in the streets. Today it ends." Richard pointed the gun directly at the Queen. The security guards were drawing their weapons, but they couldn't shoot. There were too many civilians in the line of fire. If they missed, innocent people would die. Time seemed to slow down for Thomas. He saw Richard's finger tighten on the trigger. He saw the Queen's face, calm but resigned. He saw security guards shouting, trying to get a clear shot. And Thomas ran. Thomas Bennett, the invisible janitor, sprinted across the convention hall. His legs burned. His lungs screamed. But he didn't stop. He threw himself in front of the Queen just as Richard fired. The first bullet hit Thomas in the shoulder, spinning him around. The second bullet hit his chest, dropping him to his knees. The third bullet hit his abdomen as he fell. Thomas collapsed at the Queen's feet, blood spreading across the pristine floor he had cleaned that morning. Security guards tackled Richard immediately. Someone was screaming for an ambulance. The crowd was in complete panic. But the Queen was alive. Thomas looked up at her through blurring vision. She was kneeling beside him now, holding his hand. The Queen of England was holding his hand. "Stay with me," she said, her voice shaking. "Help is coming. You're going to be all right." Thomas tried to speak. Blood filled his mouth. He coughed and whispered, "My daughter. Lily Bennett. Tell her. I love her." "You're going to tell her yourself?" the Queen said firmly, tears streaming down her face. Thomas's eyes were closing. The pain was fading. Everything was fading. The last thing he heard was the Queen's voice. "What's your name? Tell me your name." "Thomas Bennett," he whispered. Then darkness took him. Thomas Bennett was clinically dead for 4 minutes. The paramedics worked frantically, performing CPR as they rushed him to the hospital. They shocked his heart 3 times before it started beating again. He was taken into emergency surgery. 3 bullets had to be removed. 1 had punctured his lung. Another had narrowly missed his heart. The 3rd had torn through his intestines. The doctors gave him a 15% chance of survival. Outside the operating room, the Queen waited. She refused to leave. Her security team protested, but she wouldn't budge. "That man died for me," she said quietly. "The least I can do is wait." News of the attack spread instantly. Within an hour, the entire world knew that a janitor had taken 3 bullets to save the Queen's life. Television stations showed footage of Thomas running across the hall. They showed him throwing himself in front of Her Majesty. They showed him falling, bleeding, dying. And they showed the Queen kneeling beside him, holding his hand, crying. Social media exploded. #Thomas Bennett trended worldwide. People called him a hero. A legend. The bravest man in Britain. But in a small apartment across London, 8-year-old Lily Bennett had no idea her father was famous. She only knew that her father hadn't come home. Mrs. Palmer, their elderly neighbor, was watching Lily when the police arrived. "Is this the residence of Thomas Bennett?" the officer asked gently. Mrs. Palmer's face went pale. "What happened? Is Thomas all right?" The officer looked at little Lily playing with her dolls in the corner. "Perhaps we should speak privately." But Lily had heard. She walked over to the officer with wide, frightened eyes. "Where's my daddy?" The officer knelt down. "Your father is in the hospital, sweetheart. He's been hurt. But he's a very brave man. I want to see him. We'll take you to him right now." At the hospital, Lily was escorted through a crowd of reporters and photographers. Security guards formed a barrier around her. She didn't understand why everyone was shouting questions, taking pictures, calling her father a hero. She just wanted her daddy. A woman in an elegant dress approached her. Lily didn't know she was the Queen's private secretary. "Lily Bennett? Her Majesty would like to speak with you before you see your father." Lily was led to a private room. And there, sitting in a chair looking exhausted and shaken, was the Queen of England. The Queen stood when Lily entered. "Hello, Lily. My name is Elizabeth." Lily curtsied awkwardly the way they taught in school. "Your Majesty." The Queen smiled sadly. "Your father is the bravest man I've ever met. He saved my life today. He didn't hesitate. He didn't think about himself. He only thought about protecting me." Lily's eyes filled with tears. "Is he going to die?" "The doctors are doing everything they can. But I want you to know something. Whatever happens, your father is a hero. Not just to me but to the entire nation. And I will make sure you're taken care of. That's my promise to you and to him." Lily wiped her tears. "Can I see him now?" "Of course." Thomas was still in surgery when Lily arrived. She waited in a room filled with flowers. Hundreds of bouquets had already been delivered. Cards from all over the world. "Prime Minister's office, Britain honors your courage." From the royal family, "Forever grateful." From ordinary people, "You're our hero. God bless you. Thank you for your service." Lily couldn't read all the big words, but she understood that her father had done something important. After 8 hours of surgery, a doctor emerged. "He made it through. He's alive. It's still critical, but he's alive." The Queen, who had waited the entire time, closed her eyes in relief. Thank God. Lily was allowed to see her father. He was unconscious, covered in bandages, attached to a dozen machines. He looked small in the hospital bed. Fragile. Lily climbed into a chair beside him and held his hand. "Wake up, Daddy. Please wake up." The Queen stood in the doorway watching. She made a decision in that moment that would change everything. Thomas woke up 3 days later. The first thing he saw was his daughter's face. "Lily?" His voice was barely a whisper. "Daddy?" Lily hugged him carefully, trying not to hurt him. You're awake. What happened? You saved the Queen, Daddy? You're a hero. Everyone says so. Thomas's memories came flooding back. The gunman. The shots. Throwing himself in front of Her Majesty. Is she okay? The Queen? She's fine. Because of you. A nurse entered, saw Thomas was awake, and immediately called the doctors. Within minutes, his room was full of medical staff checking his vitals, adjusting his medications, asking him questions. Then the door opened and everyone in the room bowed. The Queen had entered. She walked to Thomas's bedside and smiled down at him. Hello, Thomas. How are you feeling? Thomas tried to sit up, but pain shot through his body. Your Majesty, Don't move. You need to rest. I just wanted to see you with my own eyes. To thank you personally. The Queen's voice cracked slightly. You died for me, Thomas. You actually died. Your heart stopped. And yet here you are. Just doing my duty, ma'am? No. The Queen shook her head. What you did went far beyond duty. You had every reason to stay safe. You have a daughter who needs you. You had no obligation to protect me. But you did anyway. Why? Thomas looked at Lily, then back at the Queen. Because you represent something bigger than yourself, ma'am. You represent hope, service, everything our country stands for. I served in the military for 12 years. I may not wear the uniform anymore, but I'm still a soldier. And soldiers protect what matters. Tears rolled down the Queen's cheeks. Your country has failed you, Thomas. I learned about your service record. Your medals. Your PTSD. You should have been given proper care when you left the army. Instead, you were left to struggle alone. I managed, ma'am. You shouldn't have had to just manage. The Queen took a deep breath. I've made some decisions. First, all your medical expenses will be covered by the Crown. Every penny. Second, you're being awarded the George Cross for exceptional bravery. Third, you'll receive a pension from the royal household for the rest of your life, enough to live comfortably and care for Lily properly. Thomas couldn't speak. He just stared. The Queen continued. But there's more. I've spoken with the Prime Minister. We're establishing a new foundation in your name, the Thomas Bennett Foundation, to help veterans who are struggling. To make sure no one else falls through the cracks the way you did. Your Majesty, that's too much. It's not enough, the Queen said firmly. You gave me my life. This is the least I can do. She looked at Lily. And you, young lady. I understand you're quite bright. I've arranged for a full scholarship to any school you choose, all the way through university. Your father saved my life. I'm going to make sure his sacrifice means something for your future. Lily hugged the Queen impulsively. Thank you. The Queen hugged her back, crying openly now. Thank you for sharing your father with me. The news of the Queen's actions spread instantly. But even more than the royal response, it was the common people who stunned everyone. A fundraising campaign started by a nurse who had treated Thomas raised £8 million in 1 week. People from every corner of Britain donated. Rich and poor. Young and old. Everyone wanted to help the man who had saved their Queen. The convention center where Thomas worked as a janitor erected a bronze plaque in his honor. On this spot, Thomas Bennett proved that true nobility lives in the heart, not the title. His former military unit held a ceremony in his honor. Veterans from across the country came to salute the man who had never forgotten his duty. Schools taught lessons about Thomas. Children wrote him letters. Artists painted his portrait. A famous composer wrote a symphony called The Janitor's Valor. But the most touching response came from Richard Walsh, the man who had shot him. Richard Walsh sat in a prison cell facing murder charges. He had tried to kill the Queen. He had shot an innocent man 3 times. And he wanted to speak to Thomas. The prison system arranged a video call. Thomas, still recovering in the hospital, agreed to speak with him. Richard appeared on the screen, his face haggard and filled with regret. Mr. Bennett, I don't deserve to speak to you. I don't deserve to breathe the same air as you. But I needed to say something. Thomas said nothing, just waited. I was angry, Richard continued, his voice breaking. My wife died because we couldn't afford her cancer treatments. The government denied her coverage. I lost everything. I blamed the Queen, the system, everyone. I wanted to hurt them the way they hurt me. He wiped tears from his eyes. But when I saw you run toward me, when I saw you throw yourself in front of her, I realized something. I had become the monster. You were the one protecting life. You were the one showing courage. And I was just destroying. Richard sobbed openly. I shot you 3 times. I killed you. For 4 minutes, your daughter had no father because of me. I took away the one person she loved most in the world. How do you live with that? Thomas was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, the same way I lived with watching my friends die in Afghanistan. The same way I lived with PTSD and nightmares. The same way I lived as a single father working 3 jobs. You survive. You try to do better. You seek help. I don't deserve forgiveness. No, Thomas agreed. You don't. But I'm going to give it to you anyway. Not because you've earned it, but because hate is what drove you to pull that trigger. And I won't let hate win. I forgive you, Richard Walsh. Now you need to forgive yourself and become someone better. Richard broke down completely, sobbing into his hands. That video call was leaked to the press. The world watched Thomas Bennett forgive the man who had almost killed him. And in that moment, Thomas became more than a hero. He became a symbol of grace, of mercy, of the best humanity could be. Thomas's recovery was long and painful. He had 3 more surgeries to repair damage from the bullets. He spent months in physical therapy learning to walk properly again. But he survived. On a cold December morning, Thomas stood in Buckingham Palace wearing a suit that the Queen had arranged for him. Lily stood beside him in a beautiful dress. His old military unit stood in formation as witnesses. The Queen herself pinned the George Cross to Thomas's chest. It was the highest civilian honor in Britain, awarded for acts of exceptional courage. Thomas Bennett, the Queen said formally, for extraordinary bravery in protecting the life of your sovereign, for embodying the finest traditions of British service, and for reminding this nation what true courage looks like, I award you the George Cross. The audience applauded. But the Queen wasn't finished. There's one more thing, she said with a smile. I've decided to create a new position, Special Advisor to the Crown on Veterans Affairs. And I'm appointing you to fill it. If you'll accept. Thomas's eyes widened. Your Majesty, I'm just a janitor. No, the Queen said firmly. You're a hero. You're a father. You're a veteran. And you understand the struggles that so many of our service members face. I need someone who's lived it. Someone who won't let politics get in the way of doing what's right. Will you accept? Thomas looked at Lily, who was beaming with pride. He looked at his old commanding officer, who was saluting him. He looked at the Queen, who had shown him more grace and honor than he ever imagined. Yes, Your Majesty. I accept. The Thomas Bennett Foundation had helped over 50,000 veterans. They provided housing, job training, mental health services, and financial support. Suicide rates among British veterans dropped by 30%. Thomas worked tirelessly in his role as special advisor. He met with politicians. He toured military bases. He sat with struggling veterans and listened to their stories. And he was home every night for dinner with Lily. Lily was 13 now, attending one of the best schools in London on her full royal scholarship. She was brilliant, kind, and proud of her father. One evening as they ate dinner together, Lily asked, Dad, do you ever wish you hadn't done it? Run toward that gun. Thomas thought about it. I wish I hadn't been shot. I wish I hadn't put you through that fear. But no, I don't regret protecting the Queen. Sometimes doing the right thing costs us something. That doesn't make it any less right. I'm proud of you, Daddy. I'm proud of you too, sweetheart. The doorbell rang. Thomas answered it to find a courier with a letter sealed with the royal crest. Inside was an invitation. The Queen was hosting a private dinner for Thomas and Lily at Buckingham Palace. She did this every year on the anniversary of the shooting, a quiet evening to remember and give thanks. Thomas was 51 years old when he received the phone call every parent dreads. Lily had been in a car accident. She was in the hospital. Thomas rushed to her side, his heart pounding with the same terror he'd felt 10 years ago when he'd been shot. History was repeating itself, but this time it was his daughter in the hospital bed. Lily had a broken leg and a concussion, but she was alive. She was going to be okay. Dad? She whispered when she saw him. I was so scared. Thomas held her hand, tears streaming down his face. You're okay. That's all that matters. I kept thinking about that day you saved the Queen. How you must have been terrified, but you did it anyway. That gave me courage. I thought, if my dad can take 3 bullets and survive, I can survive this. Thomas realized something in that moment. His act of courage 10 years ago had given his daughter strength. His example had become her foundation. You're braver than I ever was, Thomas said. Within hours, the Queen had sent her personal physicians to check on Lily. Flowers arrived from Buckingham Palace. A handwritten note from Her Majesty, praying for Lily's swift recovery. She comes from strong stock. With love, Elizabeth. Lily graduated from Oxford University with honors. She had studied international relations and wanted to work in veterans advocacy, following in her father's footsteps. At her graduation, the Queen attended personally. She had watched Lily grow up over the years, checking in regularly, attending her school plays and recitals. "Your father saved my life," the Queen told Lily at the graduation reception. "But watching you grow into this remarkable young woman, that's been one of the great joys of my life. You're proof that his sacrifice meant something." Lily hugged the Queen. Over the years, they had developed a genuine friendship. "Thank you for everything you've done for us, ma'am." "I should be thanking you. You shared your father with a nation. That's no small thing." Thomas watched his daughter with the Queen and felt overwhelmed with gratitude. 15 years ago, he had been a struggling janitor that nobody saw. Now he was here, watching his daughter graduate from Oxford, with the Queen of England calling her remarkable. One moment of courage had changed everything. Thomas was 61 when he received a knighthood. He was now Sir Thomas Bennet, Knight Commander of the Royal Victorian Order. The ceremony was held at Windsor Castle. Lily was there with her husband and 2 children, Thomas's grandchildren. His old military unit attended. Veterans he had helped through the foundation filled the seats. And the Queen, now in her 90s but still sharp and regal, performed the ceremony herself. "Thomas Bennet," she said, touching the sword to each of his shoulders. "For 2 decades of faithful service to Crown and country, for transforming the lives of tens of thousands of veterans, and for that one moment of extraordinary courage that reminded us all what it means to be British. Rise, Sir Thomas." Thomas stood, now officially a knight. But as he looked out at the audience, he didn't see the honor or the title. He saw his daughter and grandchildren. He saw veterans whose lives had been saved by the foundation. He saw old friends and new ones. He saw a life that almost ended in a pool of blood on a convention center floor. And he saw purpose. Meaning. Well, Thomas was 86 years old when the Queen passed away. The nation mourned. Thomas mourned. He had spent 25 years knowing Her Majesty, not just as a sovereign but as a friend. At her funeral, Thomas was given a place of honor. He walked slowly with a cane now, his body still carrying the scars from those 3 bullets. During the eulogy, the new king spoke about his mother's life. And he mentioned Thomas. "My mother met thousands of people during her reign. But she often said that one man showed her what true British courage looked like. Sir Thomas Bennet, a janitor who threw himself in front of bullets to save her life. A man who asked for nothing but gave everything. My mother never forgot that day. She never forgot him. And neither should we." After the funeral, the king approached Thomas privately. "Sir Thomas, my mother left something for you. She wrote it years ago, to be given to you after her passing." He handed Thomas a sealed letter. That evening, in his quiet home with Lily beside him, Thomas opened the letter with shaking hands. "My dear Thomas, if you're reading this, I've gone on to whatever comes next. I hope I lived well. I hope I served faithfully. But I know one thing for certain, I lived 25 years longer than I should have. Those years were a gift from you. You gave me time to see my grandchildren grow. You gave me time to serve my people. You gave me time to live. And for that, I am eternally grateful. But more than that, you showed me something important. That heroism isn't about titles or wealth or power. It's about the janitor who runs toward danger. It's about the father who works 3 jobs. It's about the veteran who never stops serving. You were invisible to the world, Thomas. But you were never invisible to me. Thank you for my life. Thank you for your service. Thank you for being exactly who you are. With deepest gratitude and affection, Elizabeth R." Thomas cried as he read it. Lily held his hand. "She loved you, Dad," Lily said softly. "And I loved her," Thomas replied. "Not as a subject loves a monarch, but as one person loves another person who truly saw them." Sir Thomas Bennet lived to be 92 years old. He died peacefully in his sleep, surrounded by his daughter, his grandchildren, and his great-grandchildren. His funeral was a state ceremony, attended by the royal family, political leaders, and thousands of veterans. The procession route was lined with people holding signs, "Thank you, Sir Thomas. A true knight. The janitor who saved a queen." At his burial, they placed his George Cross on his casket. His military medals. His knighthood. All the honors he had earned. But Lily also placed something else, a child's drawing she had made when she was 8 years old. It showed a stick-figure man with a cape, labeled, "My Hero Daddy." Because that's what Thomas had always been. Not a knight. Not a decorated hero. Not a royal advisor. Just a father who taught his daughter that courage means running toward danger when everyone else runs away. Just a janitor who proved that nobility lives in the heart. Just a man who took 3 bullets and changed the world.